Very on.
We'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all for coming, for your in-person presence. My name is Carrie Willigan. I'm the Assistant Dean for the Office of Career Services in the Business School. And we're thrilled to have you. We have quite a few students on Zoom, so welcome to our Zoom students as well. We have a wonderful panel here. This is the first time we're doing this. It's called the Business of Energy. So we're really excited. If you could just make sure your phones are off or muted, we'd appreciate that. I'm going to introduce somebody who's going to talk a little bit about some of our grad programs here in the School of Business, and then we'll get started with the panel. Our moderator is JP Offret, and he's going to please ask questions. These wonderful panelists are here to answer your questions, so please make sure to answer as well. And Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayvon Williams. I work with the Graduate Admissions Office, School of Business. So if you're interested in anything like MBA, accounting, management, business analytics, we have all those, we can suit those needs and help you get to where you need to be. So let me know if you have any questions about that. And if you're interested in continuing the conversation, I'll give you my contact information. Just come up to me and I'll give you my contact information to talk about. Okay. So with that, I'll pass it over to our lovely panel.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining. I'd like to introduce our wonderful panelists today, and they'll introduce themselves a little bit further after I do, and then we'll have a discussion about what it's like to work at Washington Gas and Dominion, their career paths, Paul and Amit and Casey, and how they came to be working in the energy industry. Exciting things happening at Dominion and at Washington Gas, many of which you've read about, really quite leading edge with wind and hydrogen and many other initiatives. And then lastly, how do you connect with Washington Gas and Dominion if you're potentially interested in an internship or working there, and what the career paths might be, and what sorts of preparation and backgrounds do you need? One of the neat things I think is it's very multidisciplinary. And so with that, I'll introduce our three panelists. Casey Easley, Legislative Affairs Advisor at Dominion Energy, and also an adjunct professor at Virginia State University in Political Science and Public Administration. Previously, amongst her other roles, she worked for Commonwealth of Virginia and Governor Terry McAuliffe as director of the Executive Mansion, and then also worked some at U.S. Department of Agriculture. So a wonderful background and many insights on careers and career pathing. So thank you, Casey. Second panelist is Amit Nagpal, Director of Strategy and Innovation at Washington Gas, but with a wonderful experience throughout the energy industry in our region and in the Southwest at One Map Mineral Resources, Exelon, really an excellent company, including enterprise risk management, living in Texas and in the Chicago area. And then also starting a career earlier on in a career in investment banking. And Amit, many universities, including Duke University, the School of Business, as well as CFA Institute and IIT Delhi. So a fantastic undergrad experience. And then our third speaker, many thanks to Paul, also at Washington Gas in the strategy and innovation area, working with Amit, Paul Streaker. He's been at Washington Gas almost 14 years now, in a number of roles, but strategic finance as well as innovation. And then also at a technology background in AOL and finance. So really progressing in the region here as the region has, the industries have shifted from the very large telecom like MCI and AOL now into Washington Gas. And so Paul's education, University of Rochester and University of Maryland. So warm round of applause for Amit, Paul, and Casey. So many thanks. And so to get started, I'd like to ask Amit to give us a little bit of background on Washington Gas.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Really excited. It's an excellent opportunity for us to kind of talk about Washington Gas. So Washington Gas, as you know, is kind of a leading utility that provides you natural gas in a DMV area. We serve over 1 million customers, and we have a long history in the region. Like, the company was established in 1848 through a presidential action. Who's president? Polk, James Polk, right? So
Yes.
he established the company through an action. And since then, 150 years, we've been, providing natural gas in the region. 2-3 years ago, we got acquired by a Canadian company, Alta Gas. So now think of us as kind of two companies. There is Canadian midstream, and then we have utilities in United States. So we have small utility in Michigan. It's called Central, and then we have Washington Gas, which serves the two areas. So that's what Washington Gas is. Paul, anything else to add to that?
No, there'd be nothing else I'd have. It's good background.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. And Casey, you'd like to give a brief overview of Dominion?
Sure. So Dominion Energy, like Washington Gas, is a public utility. We're headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We operate in 15 states, but majority of our business is in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. We have a wide range of utilities that we provide: natural gas, electricity. We have some RNG, renewable natural gas, which is taking hog waste and capturing the methane from that and turning that into natural gas. We have nuclear, and then we also have wind, and we're working on some hydrogen as well. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Well, thank you, Casey. So watching the news every day or picking up the paper, energy is on the front page, above the fold, and it's something that's both critical to world prosperity, but also many regions are at great risk, such as some of the European countries with costs. And so for each, Ahmed and Paul and Casey, what do you find exciting about the industry, and why do you think it's so important? And how do you find a great fulfillment working there? So perhaps Casey or Paul, why don't you go first this time?
So something that is a very large issue in the energy sector as a whole, regardless of what segment it is decarbonization, right? So no matter what energy company you're talking about, decarbonization of its operations, its customers' operations, the energy it provides is a critical focus, right? And it's something that I think all companies are leaning into how to decarbonize. I know Washington Gas has put forth decarbonization goals and plans. And when you hear people talk about RNG, hydrogen, renewable power, it all comes through the lens of decarbonization of the energy sector to help deal with climate change. So this is, I think, if one were to look at the energy sector, that focus is going to turn out to be a significant transition for the sector as a whole.
Casey, please.
Sure, I would agree. I mean, we're living in a time where technology and your cell phone is, the heartbeat of our world, to be honest. And so how do you get that thing charged? And so electricity and utilities provide you with those day-to-day amenities that you need. We learned during COVID, you can't do anything without Wi-Fi or electricity. And so how can we be better partners in the community to make sure that we're, Paul's point, decarbonizing, making sure that we're focusing on clean and green and renewable energies, making sure that everybody has a seat at the table. And so, in Virginia, we're a regulated monopoly. And so I know some of you all are in business school, so you don't really have a choice where you get your power from. And so the part for me that I enjoy most about my job is, no, you don't have a choice. However, I have a choice to interact with you, come into different communities like this today, meeting with individuals who are interested in learning more about the industry, partnering with nonprofits, making sure that the dollars that you do spend with Dominion Energy go back and leave a lasting imprint on the community. So that's the part that I enjoy the most.
And for me, I started my career 40 years ago working for a company called Schlumberger. So my role was kind of going offshore rigs and figuring out if there is oil there. So debate at that point of time was whether we have enough oil and at what point our production will peak. And after that, like we were staring at energy prices. 20 years, technological advancements, both in oil and gas as well as in renewable space. Now we're living in the world where we have too much energy. And we just want to make sure that it's clean, it's affordable, and it's accessible. So the debate has shifted. And it's really exciting time to be. We're at a pivotal moment now where the decisions that we will take in next 5 to 10 years will shape next 50 years. Like to give an example, like 100 years ago, right, in early 1910s, England, when they were building their ships, they took a decision that hey, we're going to go fossil fuel, not coal, and that shaped the next 100 years of energy industry. So we're at the same point now that whatever we decide in next 5 years, that sets us for next 75 to 100 years.
Thank you. So perhaps you can comment on some of the really exciting things going on in your companies. So Casey, if you could please comment on the wind farm project.
Sure. So who's heard of the Coastal Virginia offshore wind farm? Anybody? CVOW? No? Okay, we'll Google it. But the company is developing the largest offshore wind farm. It's 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach. And so it will provide enough electricity at peak capacity to energize 660,000 homes. Currently, we have 2 offshore wind turbines. Right now, they're pilot turbines, and we're using those to test our efficiency rates for the project. $9.8 billion investment that the company is making off the coast of Virginia to make sure that we are participating in decarbonization of the grid. And so JP had an opportunity to come down to Virginia Beach this summer to go out to see these test turbines. And unfortunately, the water got a little too rough, so we had to turn back around. But part of today, if anybody's interested, with JP's permission and your school, we'd love to get a group of you all out there to actually go see the project and see what's on the horizon at the company. But yeah, we're making our way. Offshore wind is not new. It's been in Europe for ages and ages and ages, and unfortunately, it's just making its way across the pond, as they would say. And so we are working across energy sectors and business sectors to make sure that this offshore wind turbine farm will be here to stay, and that companies and hopefully my company can replicate this across the country to make sure that we are leaving a green footprint, to sort of say.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. And if you are able to go, it's a wonderful experience. Even going halfway, I thought was fantastic. Given the talk from John at Dominion. Some of the details are really fascinating. So the turbines themselves are higher than a football field is long.
Washington Monument, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And if there's a storm or a hurricane, the turbines adjust so they're not facing the wind. And a lot of the technology and equipment is from Europe. So a lot of opportunity here in the United States to build up these industries that go into the turbines. So thank you very much. And Ahmed and Paul, if you could perhaps comment on some of the exciting things at Washington Gas, things you're looking at.
So our focus right now is, we have core operations, right? So we focus on that, making sure that, all our customers get natural gas in a safe and reliable and affordable way. The second is we're looking at emerging ecosystems. And part of that is how do we decarbonize our gas supply? The four kind of components. We're looking at energy efficiency over time. Then we are looking at kind of how to reduce emissions from our existing operations. We call that scope 1 emissions. And then the other two pillars are renewable natural gas and hydrogen. And we have a lot of renewable gas, as Casey mentioned, that renewable natural gas. And then on hydrogen, we're working with Dominion and other kind of stakeholders in the region to establish, if we can somehow build a hydrogen hub in DMV area. And that'll be like game changing, that'll be a game changer for the region. if we get that hub designation. Hydrogen is a kind of, I said, kind of a very exciting opportunity. And we spend a lot of time on it, and that we're kind of bullish on it. And we believe that can really decarbonize our gas system.
If you could please explain what a hydrogen hub is in a little bit more detail, I think that'd be really helpful.
Right. So think of like, you burn natural gas, right? So when you burn, if you're chemistry major, right, CH4, you burn that, it produces carbon dioxide. Now we are exploring if it's possible to, substitute in long run that natural gas with hydrogen, because if you burn H2, you combine that with oxygen and it just simply produces water. So there are cars right now that are running on hydrogen, and there are several ways you can produce hydrogen. One is very simple. You pass electric current through water. It splits into hydrogen and oxygen. You use that hydrogen. The other is you take like natural gas and run through kind of a process, what we call it SMR, and that can produce hydrogen. And then, you can use that hydrogen. The question is, can our existing infrastructure run on hydrogen? So for example, you have appliances at home, like gas burners. Can they run on that? Can they run on hydrogen? We don't know that yet. So we're trying to figure that out. Then the other is infrastructure elements, whether our existing pipelines can take hydrogen. Once we kind of figure out all that, in few years, then you will see kind of the role of hydrogen, how that will change our kind of gas grid.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, the only thing I don't, the hydrogen hub. So if you look at applications of hydrogen over the last 15 years or so, you'll generally find enormous hydrogen production sitting with enormous industrial demand for hydrogen. The current administration has put forth, I think it's under the BIL, but basically the DOE is looking to award various hydrogen hubs throughout the United States. And the objective is to really figure out where can you line something up where you've got production with the demand to take advantage of the decarbonized nature of hydrogen on a more distributed basis rather than just the ginormous industrial applications that exist today.
Yeah, the other kind of thing I'll add is, say, for example, your cars right now. So you can run that on electric vehicles. But as you increase size of that vehicle, so say, for example, if it's a truck that's running like 500 miles, those class of vehicles are very hard to electrify. So we believe hydrogen is the solution. Hydrogen can potentially decarbonize those sectors, which are hard to decarbonize using EV batteries. Do you see anything on that?
Who knows what natural gas is? Because everybody kind of glazed over a little bit. We get so excited talking about this, but I want to make sure y'all are understanding. So do you all have any questions about what it is that we're saying or need us to break it down a little bit further?
Yeah, perhaps you can describe natural gas and then the new role of liquefied natural gas with Europe.
So does anybody have a fireplace at their home or their parents' home? Okay, so running through that is natural gas. That's how you get the fireplace going. Like I mentioned at the meeting interview, we're working on LNG, RNG, as well as hydrogen as well. It's a little bit beyond my breadth of understanding, mixing that hydrogen with natural gas to reduce emissions. But a cool project that I'm super proud of because I come from an agriculture background is partnering with Smithfield. So everybody knows Smithfield, the hams. So everybody knows animals and humans all naturally have to use the restroom. And so what do we do with that waste? And so we partnered with Smithfield to capture that hog waste feces and put a tarp on it, for lack of a better explanation, and capture the gas from that. And so instead of that poop going into the ground or water or whatever, we're taking that and reusing that to heat your homes and to fire your fireplaces. So that's a cool project. It's smelly and not exactly glamorous, but it's proven. And we actually had some visitors here from Belgium over the summer in our Utah RNG facility, learning about the process and how they can implement that overseas.
Well, that's neat. Oh, thank you very much. So these are all very large projects, but Dominion and Washington Gas have IT-based projects and many other projects that are that have day-to-day impact over the last 10 years. So perhaps Ahmed or Paul, if you can describe the metering and not having to go into the homes to look at the meter and just being able to drive by. So I think it's fascinating. And then Casey, the solar energy and the whole idea of being able to put energy back on the grid and some of the ramifications of that, either for a home or for a big, large data center out near Dulles.
So on the metering side, y'all have seen gas meters on the side of your house. So way back in the day, a lot of those would be inside, so there was challenges getting inside to read it. You can find efficiencies and economies. There are companies that will have remote meters. You can literally drive a truck down the street with Wi-Fi and just pick up readings, and that saves a lot of time of people picking up those reads. The other thing that the industry looks at with meters is more real-time information. If you look at the power grid, you can get information on power consumption every 5 or 15 minutes, depending upon who your utility is. And so that enables consumers to make real-time decisions. You know, for example, hey, it's 97 degrees outside and everybody's got their AC cranked up. Hey, if we can turn yours down a little bit, that'll save on the strain on the system. So looking for similar kind of things on the gas front as well.
Thank you. And on the putting power on and off the grid, another thing interesting in the Dominion side is the situational awareness of the network. So knowing which houses don't have electricity and really planning for getting the electricity back up and running after a storm.
Correct. So like Washington Gas, we are swapping out older meters on homes for smart meters. So instead of you having to call the 1-800 number during an outage, we can look in our system to see if your power is on or off. And that helps us just be more efficient and effective. It's also a safety mechanism that we've implemented at the company as well. It helps out with safety because unfortunately we do have bad actors. And so people will try to divert electricity, or they're not paying their utility bills. And so it's prevented our line and ground guys from having to go out home by home to read your meter. And if you know, someone's angry one day because we turn their power off, or we're going to turn their power off, we've had several individuals who've been held up at gunpoint, you know, knives, and etc. So definitely helps with the safety of our workforce as well.
The other thing I'll say is that in the energy industry, not just kind of on the utility side, I came from oil and gas too. We are not using data. There is so much data that is being generated, and we don't know what to do. So anybody who's in IT systems or doing kind of data science, energy industry is kind of a very exciting opportunity. Kind of just figuring out what to do with that data. Whether to do with customer, kind of understanding customer behavior, or designing systems that are more resilient, or just kind of more technological based.
That's a wonderful point that these companies, but the industry too, it's a coming together of like the energy grid and the internet. So state-of-the-art information technology, networking, plus the energy coming together in the amalgamation of the two. And the coming together of the operational technology, like valves and switches, with the information technology. So it's a tremendous opportunity in many things that are career paths that are possible. So with that, if each of you perhaps can, of course, there isn't a usual day at work, but describe what a day or a week or a month might be for you and your roles, and maybe describe your roles a little bit further. So Casey, go ahead.
Sure. So unlike these two gentlemen, I am not technical by any means. I am a lobbyist for the company. So I work in our external affairs and government relations shop. And so during our legislative session in Virginia, which is a general assembly, and we have that across the country, I work with the lawmakers who are introducing legislation. So I work with those individuals to make sure that the pieces of legislation that they're introducing are beneficial to the company. And so working to help guide them, answer questions that they may have, provide technical assistance to them from individuals like these two gentlemen in my company as to what's best for the customers and the constituents in Virginia, specifically where I am. Also outside of session, I work in community engagement and external affairs. So making sure that all of our customers are happy and do a lot of events like this, do a lot of work with our historically Black colleges and universities, as well as our just universities in general in the Commonwealth, and making sure that we're being a great community partner to our customers here in the Commonwealth. So no day is the same for me during session. You know, I could I'm up at 4:30 a.m. I'm down at the Capitol by 6:30 a.m. Committee meetings are starting at 7 and they go late into the evening, and then you throw on a dinner or something on top of that. It's a long day. In the summers though, I travel. I do a lot of our national political work. So working with the National Governors Associations on both sides of the aisle, working with the Attorney General's Associations, et cetera, down the line on both sides of the aisle. So I'm on the road a lot. And then working here the past couple of years on our offshore wind project, I've been helping as a kind of liaison to the community in relation to that project, making sure people know what it is, how it's beneficial to them, what implications that will have on their energy bills, answering any questions. And I've also been doing a lot of work in environmental justice related to that project, because yes, the project is offshore, but it's got to come onshore at some point. And so a lot of that infrastructure goes through neighborhoods, and some of them could be rich, some of them could be not so rich, some of them could be wetlands, some of them could be cemeteries, burial grounds, slave quarters, et cetera. So making sure that we are identifying the best possible routes to make sure that that energy gets to the grid efficiently, effectively, and makes it affordable for you all to have in your home. So
How did you come to move from the Department of Agriculture to Governor McCulloch's office to now Dominion?
Yeah, so I went to Hampton University for undergraduate, which is a historically Black college university in Hampton, Virginia. My major was business finance, and I've never looked at a finance spreadsheet a day in my life outside of college.
We forgive you.
And I got a political appointment to Department of Agriculture, working in the undersecretary's office, and so just was exposed to like a wide variety of people. And I got picked to go work at the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and there I did cultural transformation work. I worked with small women and minority farmers to make sure that they had the information and access that they needed in order to apply for loans and grants through the Department of Agriculture. And then so from there, I went to work at the State Department of Natural Resources for the secretary. And then a couple months later, the governor, who was my boss at the time as well, asked me to come be, which is the equivalent of the social secretary to the governor. And so I hosted receptions, I ran the household, did all of the state protocol, worked with the raising and lowering of the flags, making sure that the butlers had the tables set appropriately for military officials coming through, all of the nuts and bolts of what you would see at like a state dinner state dinner at the White House, I guess would be the equivalent of kind of what it is that I did. Greeting dignitaries, making sure that the kitchen staff had what they needed. The chef reported to me. I was there with the troopers, so firsthand insights to what goes on to making sure that the governor and the first lady and their family are protected. So a really cool and unique experience, honestly, life-changing, met so many really cool people, some not so cool people too. But with everything in life, you take the good and you sift out the bad and you keep moving. And so from there, I went to work at McGuire Woods Law Firm as a lobbyist as well. And in between my time in the governor's office in McGuire Woods, I went to grad school at Virginia Tech and majored in public policy and administration. And so at McGuire Woods, I lobbied as well. And I actually worked for Dominion Energy through the law firm. And a spot came available at Dominion and they asked me to come in-house. And so the rest is history. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you. That's a lot.
Sorry.
Not a lot, talking wise, but a lot over 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So Ahmed, please. So a day or a month, the ebb and flow in your role, and how did you come to be a Washington Gas?
Yes, so I think that's something like you guys need to keep in mind when you kind of thinking about a role, right? A lot of roles are day-to-day tactical, right? Prior to this, I was in a role which is risk management. So then you live by it, right? You look at kind of what my P&L is and what actions I will do. Then a role like this, which is strategy, our time horizon is different. We're looking at 5 years, 10 years, what actions we need to take today so that we can set company for next 5 to 10 years. So typical kind of projects are with that kind of, the thinking in mind. So we do a lot of research. For example, we can look at, hey, what natural gas prices will do over the next kind of 5 years. Paul and I are in a lot of analysis, long-term on industry fundamental. And then there are some projects which are short-term. We talk to kind of a lot of companies if they're having kind of some emerging technology. Prior to that, try to understand what that technology can do, what that vector is, and then figure out the impact on our industry. Several projects on short term as well as kind of. Oh.
I'd say certainly short term, long term. My background, right out of grad school, I started working in project finance in the energy industry. So project finance in a nutshell is if you think about any business, you've got revenue, you've got expenses, and you've got what you paid for the capital to put in it. So project finance is if you pay for the capital, you find a contract for the revenue, sign a contract for the expenses, and figuring out how that all fits together. I spent probably the better part of the last 10 years of my career with WGL building up our solar business, and then about 1.5 years selling it. It was more fun building it than selling it. And so there, spent a lot of time with tax law and the financial implications of tax law, right? Where that comes into strategy, my role in strategy is, my background is heavily on the financial side. And so I will look at things and we'll see stuff, for example, on the legislative front, that'll have the Inflation Reduction Act, read through that, try to understand what might that mean to our company and these opportunities over the long term? What are the things that we don't know that we may want to advocate for? And to Ahmed's point, when we look 20, 30 years out, the reality is nobody in this room knows what the world's going to look like, right? So we look and we spend time thinking, well, what are a handful of potential paths? What does it mean if the company is on one of those potential paths? And what are some of the early warning signs that we know we're heading down path A instead of path B? So that's what we spend a lot of our kind of forward thinking time on. No matter what your job is, you'll have fire drills pop up on a somewhat frequent basis. So, as you think about what you want to do, I'd encourage you to think about one thing I've always found, whether it was project finance or the, figuring out how the tax equity deals worked on the renewable side. It's all a puzzle, right? You got different pieces of the puzzle. How do they fit together, right? And that's the same thing in strategy, and that's something I've enjoyed with my role. And we continue to do that, today with companies. So.
The good thing about business though is that whatever it is that you like to do, chances are it fits into any business. And so we just so happen to be talking about energy here today, but if you like graphic design, we need graphic designers at our company to design logos, marketing materials, et cetera. If you like IT, there's a role for you there. If you like accounting, there's a role for you there. And so I think just keeping your options in mind open is the biggest piece of advice that I would have for anybody. I never saw myself working in natural resources or energy by any means. I was very much so interested into the events and the marketing, the public relations, but it all kind of, pulls together a big puzzle to make sure that the organization is able to run as smoothly as possible. So just be open to whatever opportunities come your way.
Thank you. At the time, what was your motivations for applying and going back to grad school? I mean, what were you doing career-wise at the time, and how did you come to decide to do grad school?
So I was undergrad, I was an economics major at the University of Maryland. And coming out of school, I figured I wanted to go get a PhD in economics. My first job out of undergrad, I went to work for the Federal Reserve Board. It was flat out the smartest group of people I will ever work with in my entire life. And I learned that I did not want to go get a PhD in economics. So, but I did enjoy the quantitative side, so I went and got my MBA in finance and corporate accounting, right? So it was quantitative, but not hardcore PhD in economics quantitative. And that kind of started me on the path out of grad school working in the energy sector.
So you had graduated from undergrad, working for several years, and then went back.
That's right.
Thank you. Ahmed.
Yeah, I think so. That's a decision a lot of you will face. So you will start with a career. So in my case, it was oil and gas, offshore rigs. So I was at that time working in Japan, and my next posting would have been in China. So at that point, I was making an assessment of my career that, okay, what are the skill sets that I have? What are the skill sets that I can build in my career, And then I made a decision based on that. Well, what I need is probably not, I won't get in this kind of role. So I need to get something else. So whether that is master's in engineering or MBA. So I took a decision that it's going to be an MBA. And the reason for MBA is a lot of times, if you want to make a big transition after a few years, you need to stop doing what you're doing now and focus on something else. So that was my decision at that point, that I need to stop working in operations, focus on my MBA, and that will basically kind of lay out a path for me after I graduate.
So Duke was full-time MBA, right?
Duke was full-time, yeah. So and again, that's one thing that you can kind of think when you are in your role, that can I do part-time and augment my skills, or do I need to do full-time, take time off, and focus completely on my degree?
And Rochester was full-time too?
Rochester was full-time.
And Casey, what were your motivations at the time?
Well, they were less strategic than these two gentlemen, but I just had a really good mentor when I was in the governor's office, and she just so happened to teach a class at Virginia Tech in the public policy at MBA, and said, yes, your schedule is busy now, but the older you get, the harder and busier it'll be. I see Elliot shaking his head back there because he knows who I'm talking about, but a former mentor, she was a deputy chief of staff in the governor's office. And, you grow up, you have kids, you do all these things in your time becomes less and less yours. And like, let's just take this time right now to focus and get it quote unquote over with. And so I went to school at night, and it was really, really, really hard. And so it's a personal decision that you have to make. I also went back and forth whether I should get an MBA and stop working altogether. But I will say, once you've started working and you have income coming in, for me, it was a really hard decision to stop working and focus and commit and kind of struggle again going back to school full time. So I think it's a personal decision. But I learned the book component of what it was that I was doing in real life and got to understand the strategy theories based off of what I was seeing play out day to day when I worked in the governor's office. So
Yeah, thank you. See how this question goes. What you have wished you had known, or what would have been helpful to have known about companies, careers, and government when you were graduating, undergraduate? Anything come to mind that would have been?
they have paid positions in internships. I mean, I knew that you could get an internship. I knew that you could go away and work in the summer. I don't know that I took full advantage of the career services office that they had on my campus. So kudos to you all, but you know, you could get in and come in as an intern and be guaranteed full employment, you know, when you graduate. So I think what you all are doing is amazing.
Anything come to mind, Ahmed or Paul?
The thing that comes to mind for me is less about companies, and the one thing I would say if I look back over my career and being in school that I wish I knew then what I know now is focus on networking, right? Not to the detriment of your grades and your classes, but focus on networking. Good grades and technical knowledge is a price of entry. Networking is what will determine how far you, not the only thing. Networking is a big piece of what will determine how far you go with your career. So if there was one thing I could tell myself longer time ago than I care to remember, I would be spend time thinking about and focusing on networking as well as your academics.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah, so a few things I'll add is, for networking, absolutely, that's very important. Look around like in your room, like you will see like these are the people that will play a big role in your success. The second I would say is interpersonal skills and leadership are far more important than analytical skills, right? You know, when you're in college, you know, you are asked a question, you solve that, you try to find the answer. As you go in your career, the role will change to asking the right questions. To get into that habit now of asking why, right? So that's my kind of biggest wish I knew that, because like, you know, when I was in my early stage of my career, somebody gave me a question, I said, okay, I need to solve it. Versus a lot of times, we have to take a step back, figure out why I'm being asked this question, and then kind of approach that in holistic. So ask why.
Well, thank you. One other question on this topic, and then we'll move to careers and internships and those types of things at Washington Gas and Dominion. But with the energy industry changing and most industries changing and technology having rapid change, it's really important to stay current and to even be thinking about the next one or two things down the road for careers, career pathing. So how do you all stay current in your fields?
You got to read the newspaper and you got to read the clips, and you can get them for free in the morning at, making sure you turn on just a few minutes of Bloomberg or something in the morning to stay current on what's going on, because as my, old boss would say, like, we're focused here in this room, but it's a huge world out there. And so I'll never forget this story. Governor was coming back from a trade mission, and I was staying over at the home with the children, and they were on their way back, and it was like 9 a.m. And I was still asleep, laying on the couch, just kind of been up, and he came in and he dropped his hand on the table and was like, wake up, the Chinese have been up for hours. And so just think about that. And you're, whether you move to California, okay, you sleep until 9 a.m. in California, what time is it on the East Coast, right? And so constantly absorbing knowledge and learning and trying to read and gain as much knowledge as possible, I would say would be my piece of advice, making sure you read the newspaper every day and staying engaged.
Thank you.
Absolutely, avid learners, right? Like the one thing that differentiates people who succeed and people who get kind of stagnated is their constant desire to learn, right? Learning doesn't stop once you graduate. Just make sure that you are reading, staying up to date. In fact, like one advice I got from my previous boss was that I don't follow it that much, but he said like block 1.5 hour, 1 hour every day in the morning, where your kind of job is simply to read what's going on in the industry, newspapers, and absorb it.
The piece that I would add to this is you want to be up to date on what's going on. When you read things, ask yourself, what does this mean for my company? What does it mean for me? And if you spent an hour, and think about this, right? You spent an hour reading an article and you kept up on whatever it is. How do you turn that into 3 bullet points to send to your group's SVP to say, these are the 3 things you need to know? You figure that out, and that is a powerful tool throughout your career, because then you will be seen as someone who can digest a lot of information and turn it into something actionable at an executive level.
Thank you. So, and follow on. So you're an expert, Casey, in offshore wind, amongst other things, and Paul and Ahmed experts on hydrogen. So how did you all get up to speed on these topics?
Well, as I've mentioned, I am not technical, and so I had to ask why, like Amit, preface to you all, going to our subject matter experts and saying, okay, can you break this down for me? Because the people that I engage with on a day-to-day basis are individuals like you who do not have technical expertise or understand what kilowatt hours are, or what, a landing spot is, or how a substation works. And frankly, neither do I. And so how can I take complex information, distill it down and spit it out to people on a 6th grade, reading level is what my goal is, to make sure that everybody comprehends and understands and takes that home so that they can, judge themselves accordingly. And so asking why and going to people to, network with your colleagues who may be more well-versed than you are in certain things. And so making sure that you develop those relationships at work is important for me. And always never being afraid to not know the answer is, I guess, what I would say.
Thank you.
Say, figure out your core competence. For myself, it's been project finance. And so when I think about a business problem, I think about it in terms of the financial aspect and how it works and what are the value drivers. That's how I think about it. Doesn't make it the way to think about it. It's a way to think about it. I will literally take stuff I read out of investment banking reports and just try to reverse engineer the underlying assumptions. Whatever way it is that you break things down and you understand them, if you do that, then when you ask questions of the expert and you say, hey, I see, what you ask them, what is, what's the operating cost of this thing in dollars per whatever, and they give you an answer, you've got a basis for whether or not that makes sense to you, and you can ask more intelligent questions. So my guidance there is figure out how you think about the world. What is your core competence? Break it down that way, and that'll put you in a position to ask intelligent questions, and the answers will make a lot more sense to you.
Yeah, so when I started, when I was graduating, those were like early days of it. So if you want to learn something, say for example, at that point you said, yeah, I want to learn about hydrogen. So the only way for me to learn about hydrogen was to work at a company that is dealing with that. That's not the case now. If you want to learn, for example, say you want to learn something about, the company next door, say Lockheed Martin, fighter aircraft. You go to website, you go to research reports. There is so much literature online that almost like 30 to 40% of what you will learn in real job can actually be learned online, right? Keep that in mind, right? And say, I'll give you my example. Last year I was trying to teach my kid programming language. Now, I haven't done programming in a while, but you simply go there. Yeah, I'm going to pick up Python today and do it. Yeah, it's possible. So it's just that desire to learn, and then you'll figure out how to do it.
Great, thank you. The next topic, and then we'll open it up to your questions, is you all joined Washington Gas and Dominion after having worked 1 or 2 or maybe more other places. But how does having Dominion and Washington Gas engage with juniors and seniors and master's degree students? for internships and possible careers and career paths.
So we have an active HR department that does student recruitment. We have a diversity student career fair that's held in October of every year. And so all of that information can be found on our website. We also have internship program through the company, as I mentioned earlier. So if you come in as a junior and you're senior, if you do a good job, you will be offered full-time employment. As master's students, we don't really have a whole lot of programming for master's students. We do offer tuition reimbursement through the company. So if you come into our company and are interested in going back to school, we do support you monetarily in that aspect as well. But I'll leave with JP our information for diversity student conference, as well as our internship program. And so you all are eligible to apply for all of those internships and scholarships on our website.
And then someone joining your company right out of school. So some companies now and years ago more, I think, used to rotate new hires to different departments. Do you all do that? Or does someone join and is assigned to one department for a year or two?
You're hired into a specific job at our company. We do have training programs. If you come in into a specific role, you have designers or linemen and groundmen on the services side, you can rotate through some of those careers. Our rotational program at our company doesn't really kick off until you get into like more of the management area, and then you're able to be bounced around to different departments so you can learn about each of the core functions of the company. But that's a really good question. I'll have to take that back to HR to see if we have something like that. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thanks. Ahmed and Paul?
So for us, like right now, the way we are tackling our recruitment talent strategy is that each group, like whether it is strategy, whether it is accounting, whether it's finance, they're going out and kind of doing it themselves, right? We're trying to set up a program for next year where we will hire like 5 to 10 interns during the summer, and then they can kind of join different groups. For full time, again, it's a similar strategy. Like we do not have a rotation program, but once you join a group, after a few years, companies very kind of, we're very open. If you see an opportunity within the company that excites you, absolutely, the management supports.
Thanks. Do you all have any questions or comments or thoughts? Okay, yes, please.
Great one. So, and this is open everywhere. Do you find like moving forward with innovation in energy, should we be focusing on like production of new technology, or should we really focus on kind of optimizing current thing, like your example of waste and being able to kind of capture the wasted energy that we have? What's more important to focus on repurposing things or creating?
I think a mixture of both for me, but I'm also not a techie person either. But I would say, it's gonna take a while for people to get on board with new things, and so people are creatures of habit. So how can we allow them to do what it is that they normally do, and then how can we take some of that and implement new technology to make things better? But
I think it'll be portfolio solutions. Like if you look at like there can be repurposing, there can be like efficiency, like the vehicle, for example, 50% more efficient what it was like 10 years ago. And then also keep in mind, rest of the world, China, Africa, India, there is so much energy poverty there that without technological kind of innovations, we won't be able to solve the problem. So it's going to be portfolio solutions.
Casey, Paul, and Ahmed are going to stay hopefully a few minutes after here, and if you want to talk to them directly. Are there other questions or comments? Elliot, please ask a question.
Sure.
Maybe you could stand up because of the leaf blowing.
Yeah, sure. So Casey did touch on this a little bit, but I'm curious about your rules about mentorship. And so, you have any advice for us about how you seek out mentorship? And maybe if you recall some advice a mentor gave you, why that would be.
Say the best advice I got from a mentor was you can be right or you can be effective. Right. The point wasn't to run around and be wrong. The point was it's more important to be able to effectively communicate and bring people along with you and to actively listen to other people because you may realize you're not right. So you can be right or you can be effective was, you know, a key learning I had.
I would say ask if you see someone doing what it is that you think you want to do. And the key word I said, think you want to do, because sometimes when you get into it, you're like, oh, no, this is not what I signed up for. But just ask. I mean, you know, we're all busy. We all have our own things going on in the back of our heads, our families, our, you know, whatever it is that makes us tick. But I know me, I didn't get to where I am alone or by myself or without support from my family and mentors. And so most of us are very easy to get along with and very eager to help. So just ask for what it is that you think you want or need. 9 times out of 10, people will be more than gracious to spend some time with you.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Oh, yes, please.
Hello, so I heard you talking about hydrogen fuel, and this is more out of curiosity. Maybe I missed this because I didn't arrive late, but I've heard a while ago hydrogen fuel cells potentially powering cars. Do you know anything about that or have any comments on that?
These two would have to answer that.
So that it is technologically feasible right now, right? Hydrogen is a fuel that goes into a fuel cell to produce electricity to run the motors for a car. Using hydrogen to decarbonize the transportation sector, a lot of it is hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. The trade-offs you're going to run into is range and weight and cost, right? And so that's where Amit spoke earlier about, depending upon the size, I mean, the light passenger vehicles are probably going to all end up being just plug-in battery electric vehicles. That's my personal opinion, that fight is over. If you're talking about, you know, if you think about an 18-wheeler that's running 500 miles up and down the East Coast, to get a big enough battery to power that, the battery itself weighs so much it becomes counterproductive, and that's where hydrogen may fill a role. I mean, don't take that as the only place hydrogen can fill a role, but that's a logical place for hydrogen to fill a role.
Thank you. One or two last questions? Okay, if not, if Casey and Paul and Amit could please make some closing remarks, and then we'll if you have any questions for them personally, that would be great. So Casey, please go ahead, closing remarks.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. If you have questions, interested in Dominion Energy, I have business cards with me. Please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Casey.
Yeah, I'll leave my excited to be here. You know, it was a great opportunity interacting with you guys. I will leave my contact info, and if you have any questions, you want to see kind of like, you want to understand more about any aspect of career in energy or outside energy, you know, feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to spend some time.
And thank you, Amit.
Like Amit, I'll leave my contact info. It was a pleasure speaking with you all, and I would say this is actually a really interesting time to be in the energy sector with all the changes that are coming. And so as you think about where you want to be and what you want to do in your career, it could be a really interesting time to get in and see where things go. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for everyone. Thank you all for joining. If you have any questions or comments for Casey, Paul, or Amit, please go ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I'm sorry. Thank you, Anna. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.